Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me all. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name is Cindy Norcott, and I'm the CEO of ProTalent. We're a Westville-based recruitment agency, but we do specialist recruitment throughout the country. And I'm really happy to be here today speaking to Paula Quincy. Just a little bit on why we're doing this. A couple of weeks ago, there was quite a big spate of retrenchments around KZN, and we hosted a webinar on the practical steps to take once one is retrenched. And we then had feedback from delegates saying, gosh, it is quite a psychological journey, which we absolutely know. Just to give you feedback on something I experienced a few years ago, I had a gentleman come and see me for an interview, and he was dressed in his suit and looked really very well presented. And we started chatting. He had been retrenched for 3 months. He hadn't told his family. He went out every day. He came home at the same time, hoping to find a job in that time. And my heart broke for this guy. For me, I think we have so much of our identity in the work we do. So I'm really excited to just share with you, the thoughts of Paula as a behavioral specialist. So I'm not going to take too long. I'm just going to introduce Paula. She is the founder and CEO of Engaged Humans, and Paula works with individuals and organizations as well. She's a certified Imago relationship therapy educator and facilitator, an NLP practitioner, a PDA analyst, coach, and trainer. And Paula is also the author of 2 self-help guides. One is called Embracing Conflict, and the other one is Embracing No, as well as being an international speaker, advocate for mental health, and activist for gender-based violence. The second person I've got on the call is Cheryl McKinnon. Cheryl owns a company called The Science of Change. Cheryl's been working as a behavioral specialist for many years. She focuses a lot on leadership development. And right at the end, Cheryl will be introducing herself and offering 2 free profiles. One will be the EQ Light, which is an emotional intelligence profile, and the other one is the values assessment. These are highly valuable tools and incredible tools for people who are putting together CVs, looking for new roles, and maybe are in the process of a lot of self-reflection as well. So I'm going to start off with Paula. Paula, it's so lovely to have you here. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Cindy. And it's great to be here and talking about such an important topic that a lot of people have gone through or are busy going through, or some people may even still go through in the future, because it's happening all around us.
Absolutely. Paula, I've never been retrenched, but I have been unemployed before. And I remember, there was so much going on. And that stress, it felt like every week it was Monday again, and time was flying, but nothing was happening. And I must be honest, Paula, as a recruitment agency, we often hear from candidates every week going, nothing's happened in the last week. And that intensifying fear and anxiety that comes when, you're really willing and able to get a job, but things are taking a lot longer than you'd like. So just a question. I mean, I'm going to talk to you as if I'm unemployed and I've been retrenched, and if you could give me guidance. I also just want to say to the people on the call, please fill in the chat. Any questions, any comments. If you feel like you identify with us, it's nice to know that you're not alone. You might give other people permission as well. And right at the end, the last 20 minutes, we'll answer any questions you've got, and we really would like it to be interactive towards the end. So Paula, I'd imagine I've been retrenched. How do I understand my emotional reaction, my immediate reaction, and how do I work through this? Do you have any steps or pointers in that area?
Yeah, so when you go through an experience like this, it usually comes across as a shock, right? Because we're not expecting this. We kind of, unless we've had some sort of preemptive signs or warnings or discussions that this may be happening, but usually it kind of feels like it's come as a left curveball, and totally we go into shock, which is a natural human reaction, because our whole sense of certainty and stability and security has been shaken. If you think of Maslow's hierarchy as a basic human need, we want the security that, we can put food on the table, a roof over our head, and our bills can be paid. And all of a sudden that foundation has been shaken up. Because the first thing is, well, I'm not getting that paycheck every month that gives me that security and that stability. And then, it's like going through the same experience as a loss or a death, right? Where we go through those emotional sort of roller coaster of the anger, the denial, the sadness, and then eventually the acceptance of the situation. So we go through this roller coaster of emotions, and unless we actually sit and reflect and name those emotions. So there's a saying, if you name it, you can tame it. So if you can name what you're experiencing and what you're feeling, so I feel anxious, I feel angry, I feel sad, I feel scared, which is completely okay in an experience in a situation like this. That's the first step in being able to process your emotions. In other words, working through the emotion and then deciding based on how to overcome those emotions and not let them kind of grip you, but that you can actually work with them and work through them to help you, come out on the other side.
Thanks so much, Paula. I've just seen, we've had a comment from she's saying, never been retrenched, but have had to retrench staff and also taken voluntary retrenchment, have become a master of change, and embracing change is crucial. Then you see life in a new, fresh light, which I think is so important. And I'm also very aware there might be people on this call who are not necessarily victims of retrenchment, but the people who have been tasked with retrenching others. So I think it's such an amazing understanding of human nature to have that understanding when having to do this very unpleasant task. It might help you to understand people's reactions as well. But, Paula, I think people aren't just grieving an income. I mean, if I lost my job, it's not just the income. What else am I losing if I am retrenched? What you mentioned that sense of loss and grieving something. We only grieve something we lose. So yeah. What else are we losing that we can name and understand?
Yeah, you're right. And it's more than just the paycheck. It involves a number of things. So first of all, our daily routine. Having a job or a career gives us a sense of purpose. It gives us a reason to get up every day and go to work, right? And to go to do something that gives us some form of fulfillment. That doesn't mean that we're not going to have bad days at work. We do, right? But it's that daily routine that gives us structure, that gives our life a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning and value to it. And then there's also the social connections of the people that we work with, so our teammates and people within the organization, as well as customers and suppliers that we may be working with. So it's those social connections and those social interactions which are crucial to our survival as a human being, but also our ability to thrive, because the brain, so from a neuroscience point of view, the brain actually survives and thrives in tribes. And our workplace environment is a tribe that we belong to that gives us a sense of identity and a sense of belonging. And then there's also that professional identity of, whatever our career title or job title is, that we are known by. And often how we introduce ourselves, right? Because when we go to networking events or when we meet people, kind of one of the first things that we get asked is, well, so what do you do? So that professional identity, that label now, we don't have that anymore. It's been taken away from us. And then also the loss of future expectations, in terms of my career aspirations, or I was working on this project that I was loving and I wanted to see it, through to completion, or I was busy with this program or job shadowing or studies or whatever it might have been. And now those future aspirations and expectations have also been potentially taken away and lost. So it's acknowledging these losses on a number of levels that we are grieving or may need to grieve, because we generally only focus on the tangible thing, and often that's the salary side or the money side of it, because we can measure it by how much we do or don't have in our bank account, right? But we don't necessarily look at those other things. And so it's important to acknowledge those losses, because that contributes to our feeling anxious and scared and angry and all of those things that go with an experience like this.
That makes a lot of sense, Paula, because I can imagine, when you've been working at a company for, say, 5 years, or you've been working your whole career, and suddenly unemployment is thrust on you unexpectedly. I know for me, when I'm out of my routine, I feel out of sorts. There's a certain comfort, I think, that comes from knowing that there's a certain amount of stress waiting for you, if that makes sense. There's a certain amount of calls you're going to have, emails you're going to have, and a certain busyness that I kind of thrive on. So if that was taken away from me, I think I'd feel like the rug was pulled out from under me. And I think you're so right. The work family, that work tribe, even if you don't like some of the people you work with, we spend sort of 8 hours a day with our teams. I know not everyone works in person, but, you do spend more time with them than with say, your family and your friends that you absolutely adore. And I think sometimes when there's not a chance to say goodbye, where it's been like literally a quick exit, it can be quite traumatic as well. And I think that loss of a label and identity is so important. Who am I if I'm no longer the financial manager of ABC, or I'm no longer the high-flying executive at XYZ? So I think that can be quite alarming. And then just the last point, I'm an ambitious person. I've got a timeline for everything. So imagine you've got this career trajectory that you've been working towards, and now, through no fault of your own, potentially, it's been taken away. You have to kind of re-strategize and look at things in a very different light. So the next question I've got for you is, okay, so I'm now unemployed. I'm grieving the loss of my job, possibly the loss of my identity. But I know I have got strengths and resources I can use. I might not see them right now. I might feel like I really don't know what to do next. What is the next step?
Yeah, and that often that loss of identity and that loss of that daily structure and routine can leave us feeling very lost and very alone and very isolated. And the key thing is to not kind of withdraw and retreat, from your networks and from, your other areas of your life, because you are more than just your job and your job title. And I think, going through an experience like this can feel like a personal rejection and where, we can take it quite personally. But this is where we need to kind of flip it around and look at it from a different angle. And that, yes, you may have lost your job and your salary per se, but what you haven't lost is you still retain your qualifications that you have. You still retain your skills, and you still retain whatever achievements you've achieved. It doesn't matter how small they are or how big they are. Any awards that you may be, or acknowledgements or recognition that you may have been given, as well as other skills that you've developed over your career path. And it's looking at these and reflecting on these and making a list of these that reminds you that you are more than just your job title, and that you aren't, you haven't been reduced to nothing. It may feel like that, but there is a lot to you, and you can build on these things. And that's where resilience comes in. And, it can help give you that sense of self-worth and boost that confidence, as opposed to feeling helpless in a situation like this.
That's great. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, in terms of, if each person here on the call were to do a list, and I'd encourage you, if you are feeling down, maybe to do a list of what I'm proud of, what I've done, what I've achieved, not just your CV. I mean, everything on your CV is true, your experience, your talents, your skills. But I think sometimes we put so much stock on the work experience and the things we've achieved. But, you might be a parent, you might be a daughter, you might be a great friend, you might be involved in the community. There might be things that you've mastered. You've got hobbies and interests that you've got, and maybe it's time to also look at those accomplishments as well. And whatever experience you've got, no one can take that away, whatever achievements you've got. And in my opinion, being retrenched or being unemployed is a temporary state. It will change. I see there's a comment from Rishka: unleash the entrepreneurial drive in you and look at what you love to do, something that makes that makes hard work seeming like hard working is always a great place to direct your new roadmap. And absolutely, it's funny, since COVID, we saw lots and lots of what looked like an initial horror story turn into a beautiful story of triumph, where people started hobbies, they started small micro businesses, they started consulting, they were completely out of their comfort zones. And then when the market corrected itself, people did not want to get a job because they actually were doing something that they really, really enjoyed. So, and something that was flourishing. So, I think that's an important thing to also hang on to. And sometimes a lot of us are hanging on to something that wasn't great in the first place. It was a job that maybe we were tired of. It wasn't maybe that fulfilling. Maybe there was a toxic environment. And sometimes being forced into an unemployed state is the necessary gift we needed, because now we have nothing to lose. Sometimes we are comfortable. So for anyone who's sitting there thinking, I'm sitting on an idea, or I've been always wanting to do this, now's the time. If you are unemployed and you try something and you fail, well, then you're still unemployed, then look for a job. So I think sometimes it can be the golden moment and the golden opportunity if you've got the idea of what to do. Paula,
Yes, and I think,
yeah,
sorry, I think you've touched on an important thing here, is that people can internalize this as a sense of failure, or that they have failed. And so just to remind people that failure is an event, not a person.
Yeah.
So you might have been retrenched from your job and lost that identity and all of those things that go with it. That doesn't mean that you have failed. It just means that the system failed you, and companies retrench for various reasons. Sometimes they have to retrench to keep the business afloat, and that it is part of the casualties that come with a business environment. Sometimes the leaders have to make those hard, difficult decisions, and it's not personal. It's not about you, even though we may take it on as being personal. So just to remember that failure is an event, not a person, and that doesn't mean that you failed.
Absolutely. I think that's great. Rushka's raised her hand. Do you mind if we can allow her to chat?
Absolutely.
Let's see.
Hi, thank
Hi,
you
Rushka.
for the insight, ladies. Very well spoken. I thought let me just speak rather than spamming the chat box. What I'd like to say really is more on the inspiration side, that if this has happened to you, then you've got to, as we've said, you've got to look at it as a change. And you've got to embrace that change, because you've actually maybe got a lucky packet in the middle of your life. You could
Absolutely.
have just got a nice little kitty to think about, well, how do I restart? How do I reboot? Remember, corporates are getting smaller. So it's gonna happen, it could happen again. So, and it's more difficult to get jobs. And really, if South Africa is going to grow, how do we change this mindset of feeling like you're not worthy, or that you've been retrenched? Because it could happen again, and you could be employed again, you could be retrenched again. Then what are you going to do? I'm saying, look at what you love to do, and look at how you could use that money in your severance pay, or how you could maybe just buy and sell something, because there's so many great gadgets out there that you can just buy and resell in the right markets. And also to be able to look and say, well, I maybe the word employed is too hard, because it was just a brand wherever you left, or whoever left you. The people that were in that company are still there, or they've also left. And that's really where you carry your ties and your network. And those people that you've built all those bridges with might actually take you to the next step, because that's where your experience lies, and that's where your network lies. So wherever you've planted those seeds all over your career, maybe this is time to harvest those
I love that.
seeds.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Rushka. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And just adding on to what Rushka was saying, often I find when people do get retrenched from a company, they often provide a consulting service to that company or to other companies. And yes, your previous employee, your previous colleagues and bosses are your network. So I think it's also maybe time to take out not just the list of your achievements and the things you love to do, but the list of who you know, and reconnect with those people as well. Absolutely. Paula, if I am sitting now and I'm unemployed, I know it's important to have a support system. So if I came to you for advice, what support systems can I draw on? What do I do? Is it this little black book, or is it my family?
So it's a combination of all of those, right? So starting with your most immediate support structure, which is often family and friends, or your partner if you're in a relationship, because those are our trusted tribe. It's the people that we lean into when we're going through tough times. It's also the people that we lean into when we're going through good times and we want to celebrate, right? And so this is a time where, yes, you may be feeling, embarrassed and ashamed and all of that because of the stigma associated with being retrenched. And you may want to withdraw and not lean onto these people. But that's actually where I want to encourage you that this is the best time to lean into those people, because yes, they provide emotional support. However, they also provide networks that you can tap into for other opportunities, right? And if you don't tell people what you're needing and wanting or looking for, people don't know how to help you, and they don't know how to keep their ears open for opportunities for you should something come across their path that they think, oh, I know so-and-so is looking for this, or I know so-and-so can do this, right? So your immediate support structure would be your family and friends, and then kind of going outward, if you think of the layers of the onion, people within your professional network. And that's why it's so important to build a professional network. That saying, or that cliche about it's not what you know, it's who you know, could not be far further from the truth in terms of how you tapping into your professional networks can actually help you. And then also having mentors and out there, and mentors can be both in our personal space, so through communities, and so like, for example, churches or sports clubs or other forums that we belong to, and also in our, mentors in our professional space as well. So tapping into those people because of their networks can be a huge help in helping you to find the next step in your career, or whatever it is that the next opportunity that you're looking for. And then next to that would be support groups that you could tap into, and or seeking professional help. So whether it's a life coach, a business coach, a counselor, a psychologist, or even an emotional support group. So talking through your experience helps you to process your emotions and helps you to not get stuck in that space and head down a negative spiral, but also help you to become creative and innovative with ideas around how you can find whatever that next opportunity is for you while you're going through this process.
I love that. And I think you're right. I think that that inclination to want to withdraw is often quite strong, but we actually need to do the opposite. And, I was also thinking, now's the time to maybe reach out to other people. I remember during COVID, I had so many people reaching out to check in, but I found a lot of the time they weren't really checking in. They were really in need of a check-in, if that makes sense. But they started the ball rolling. So I'd be like, I'm actually doing okay. How are you? Actually, I'm struggling. And sometimes it's just reaching out in whatever way possible. So I would also encourage people to, maybe who can I have a coffee date with? Who can I reconnect with? Who can I connect with on LinkedIn and have a chat? Who can I say, can we do a Zoom call? And a daily phone call to connect with someone, a voice note. I think that's important. Check in on your ex-colleagues. Maybe they always say, if you want a friend, be a friend, And,
Yes.
and also remember that when you talk to somebody in your network, there's such power in a referral. If they say, I know someone, well, that's amazing, because that, when you phone that someone and say, actually, my friend Paula said I should chat to you, you've gone right up there, and you have the interest and the attention. Sally has raised her hand. Sally, would you like to unmute and just share your thoughts?
Hi, thank you. I'm glad you brought up retrenchment in COVID, because I think support systems in COVID, it's very different to being retrenched now post the pandemic, when there's been a lot of recovery. And I think it's very important to make that distinction of in in the pandemic, I'm speaking from experience and also from a psychology perspective, is that the difference between being retrenched when support systems are robust and stable, and the difference between being retrenched when I had a very strong professional network, very strong personal network, and I was absolutely traumatized when I was retrenched from my 16-year job. And I still haven't quite decided what I was more traumatized by. A, the how and whatever. But B, the fact that my network, which by not only by my knowledge, people around me, I was so shocked by the reaction of what should have been a very solid support network, but in pandemic times, psychologists, mentors, everyone was just tumbling through space, trying to just keep some semblance of something day by day. So I really would be interested in the studies of people who were retrenched in the pandemic when support systems were completely in disarray to now. And I think it just is something that needs to be acknowledged. I'm employed at the moment, so
Oh, good.
um, but I'm glad you brought it up because I think it's really important because there's a very big distinction between the two global, local environments.
Absolutely.
And
And
you're
I'm
right.
going to hand over to Paula because I'm sure you've had a lot of experience there. And Sally, like you said, I think everybody was reeling. So people who would normally have had the capacity to help you were drowning. And
Yeah.
so I think that was probably the I'd love to hear your thoughts, Paula.
Sorry, can I just
Yeah.
say, including myself, is I was a strong leader, so people didn't have that perspective that I was struggling, and anyone that I spoke to said, "Good luck, Sal. It's brutal out there." That was my lived experience, and my voice then just got quieter and quieter. So I definitely
Yeah.
wasn't the only one in that boat.
Shame, Zelly. Yeah. You raise a good point, and during COVID, we were all going through the experience together. And we were talking about it. We were talking about mental health. We were talking about, solidarity. We were talking about, supporting each other. And everybody was talking about it. Whereas now, kind of, I don't want to say business has gone back to usual, but people have got on with their lives, right? And I mean, it's also hard to believe that COVID was like 5 years ago. But people have just got back on with their lives, and our lives are busy. We're just juggling and trying to survive from one day to the next. So I'm not condoning the behavior, but when a person is just stuck in their day-to-day routine and trying to get through what needs to get done and managing responsibilities, both personal and professional, it can be difficult or hard to show empathy when our own tanks are empty. Whereas in COVID, the world had come to a halt and everybody had capacity to be empathetic because we were going through it together. And so that's why, yeah, it is brutal out there because you do feel like you're going through this alone and nobody understands or nobody can relate or nobody gets the fear or the trauma that you're going through, because it is a traumatic experience, because they are distracted by their day-to-day lives and what they're going through. So it kind of does feel like one step removed, even though what you're going through is very real.
I think, Paula, I also saw during the COVID times, you would hear that this company's closed, and it became so almost run of the mill that people were, as you say, people were dealing with their own trauma and like, oh gosh, so and so has lost their job, but this person's sick. So almost in if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, somebody's might be dying, and you've lost your job. Meanwhile, this is hugely traumatic, but I'm busy dealing with my friend whose husband might be dying and a potentially sick child and kids at home. So I think COVID was just the perfect storm, which was horrific. And I think a lot of people did feel unseen. And even though we had the discussions all the time on well-being and that, a lot of people probably felt completely isolated regardless. Sally, do you want to just finish that thread? Thanks.
Sure, yes, thanks. And just to say that my peer group of clinical psychologists, and I'm fascinated by the subject because I think it's really still very important. It's underpinned by the fact that about a year ago, they said that it's going to take us about 20 years for our nervous systems alone to recover from the pandemic. And a month ago, I asked the same people the same question. They said it's going to take more than 20 years. And I'm not talking about medical staff. I'm talking about that's a different kettle of fish. I'm talking about people, just everyone. And my pharmacist peers also are telling me that I want to know what are the patterns of their patients and their clients, what are they seeing? And their anxiety and depression is just off the chart. So I think it's a time where it's difficult to just expect things to, even though they look normal, that actually our capacities have a very long way to go to recover. We are still in a very deep, long recovery. And that just needs to be acknowledged and encouraged. Yeah.
Yes.
Sally, that's such a good point. I mean, if you think about it, if I look at my parents and in-laws that were brought up in the war, even now, they've got behaviors that were impacted by when they were children. So I can imagine it's actually quite unsettling when you say 20 years plus, because let's be honest, most of us, if we did a poll, I'd love to just ask your opinion. How many of you feel like your nervous system has been hammered in the last 5 years? 100%, 100%. So that's a really good thing to consider. So, when you're coming in with a compromised nervous system and you are retrenched, it's almost like a double whammy that many people are really battling to deal with, never mind anything else that goes wrong. And just segueing from that, Paula, Sally mentioned the stress, the depression, the anxiety. Do you have any strategies that we can use to help us if we are sitting here unemployed or just in a space where we are feeling anxious, depressed, or stressed? What can you suggest?
Yeah, I mean, there are quite a few strategies. I just also want to acknowledge what Cheryl shared in the group, which links to what Sally said, which is we have seen from a psychometric perspective how people's profiles have changed post-COVID, and as a result of that post-traumatic stress disorder that they're experiencing, because everybody experiences trauma differently, and the body absorbs trauma for years to come. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense of what Sally's saying, and that does link into the practices that you can do to help you manage your stress and your anxiety, right? The typical ones that we are spoken about is the mindfulness practices, which is things like breathing exercises, journaling, meditation, etc. But so not everything works for everyone. So you've got to find practices that help you self-regulate your emotional state, right? And so for me, as an example, what helps me manage my stress and anxiety is exercise. And so I'm part of the 5 a.m. club, and starting my day off with some kind of exercise routine is what helps me manage my mental emotional state and my energy levels so that I can deal with whatever life throws my way during the day. So in other words, it helps to build resilience, right? And that's really what we're looking for at the end of the day when it comes to these kinds of strategies and techniques, which is helping you build your resilience muscle. That doesn't mean that you're not going to react to trauma or that you're not going to have stress and anxiety. You are. It just means that you're going to be able to manage and self-regulate your emotional state and your reactivity to situations and be able to process them and work through them in a better way. So yeah, mindfulness exercises, I've mentioned the typical ones is journaling, meditation, exercise. And exercise doesn't have to be hectic exercise like going to gym or running a marathon. Research has shown that just going for a walk outside in nature already has a grounding, calming effect on us. And even if it's just 10 minutes 3 times a week, that in itself is great. Doing things like gardening, for example, adult coloring in books is a great way to do it. Listening to calming music, whatever it is so you need to build your own stress toolkit with a number of tools, because one day this tool might help you and the next day it may not, and you may need to pull on another tool. So the more tools you have, the more empowered you are to be able to manage and self-regulate yourself when you are recognizing that anxiety is coming on. But that's the key thing, right? Is recognizing the red flags of anxiety. Because we all react differently. Some people may shut down and withdraw. So have you noticed or observed that you've actually started pulling away from people, that you've started going quiet and silent, and you're spending more time alone and isolated? Do you become aggressive and, kind of reactive? How is it that you can recognize your own anxiety triggers and then use the tools in your toolbox to help you manage them, as opposed to being sucked in by them?
Well, there's some amazing tools there. Thank you, Paula. I know the other day I was working from home and I was getting so stressed about something, and I actually went outside, lay on the grass with my dogs for half an hour, took a half an hour break. I can't tell you the difference of being on the grass, barefoot in nature with my dogs. And also, sometimes just working from home can give you that, I don't know, that sort of escape from people. A lot of us are peopling a lot. So I think that's important. And sometimes if I'm feeling stressed, I put a candle on, at my desk, and I just, sort of take a break. So another question, how can retrenchment be a turning point?
Yeah, I think it was Raksha that alluded to it earlier on, in that we may see it as a breaking point for us, but it could actually also be a springboard for us, because it gives us an opportunity to kind of hit the reset button and really sit down and reflect on my career path and how far I've come. Does it truly align with who I am and my values and where I'm at in my life stage? Because often we don't kind of sit and reflect on where we're at in a life stage and the things that were driving us before, our internal, emotional, motivational drivers. So, for example, a young person that's just starting out in their career, they're quite driven and ambitious and want to climb the corporate ladder and looking up for promotions and bonuses and, career opportunities, as opposed to someone who is in a different life stage. So let's say, for example, you're married and you've got children. So in that life stage, your priority is probably more around family orientated and spending quality time with your children and family and that kind of thing. So it's a great opportunity to sit down and go, where am I at right now in my life stage? And what are the things that are important or of value to me? And how can I use that to kind of really position myself in a career or a role that aligns with who I am and where I am going in my next life stage, or what I'm aspiring to? And that can help you narrow down your sort of job search or your career search, and also the kind of people to tap into, because you've got a more clearer picture and idea of what it is you're looking for and who you are and where you want to go.
Fantastic. Thanks, Paula. I read a statistic that said that we cannot spend more than 25% of our day doing work that we hate and still love our jobs. So I was also thinking that it might be a nice opportunity as well to look back and go, in my last role or in my career to date, what didn't I like? What didn't energize me? And start sort of maybe reposition yourself for work that is more related to your strengths. I think that's a nice opportunity as well. And, the world is changing. There's remote work. Our agency is getting so much remote work. There's fractional work. There's contract work. There's so many different opportunities. How do I maintain a sense of purpose?
Yeah, and structure, believe it or not, so in other words, routine gives us a sense of purpose, because it gives us something to focus on. It gives us actions to take, as opposed to kind of getting up and letting the day evolve by itself and wandering around aimlessly, thinking, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do that, which can affect our motivation and our energy levels. So, definitely I would say put some kind of routine or structure to your day. Whether it's, and we call it chunking time. So in your diary, you chunk out blocks of time. So you can chunk out time where I'm going to search the job boards and that. I can chunk out time that I'm going to go and have coffee chats with people, and I'm going to schedule those coffee chats for the next 6 weeks in advance. I can chunk out time to go to gym or go for a walk or spend time with my pets. That helps me, manage my emotional state. I can chunk out time for exercise, those kind of things. It's those small little things that give us a sense of accomplishment at the end of the day, that, okay, so today I reflect on my day. I sent off 5 emails, I applied for 5 jobs, and I spoke to 3 people. So that gives me a sense of I'm actually doing something proactively to change my situation, as opposed to getting stuck in that victim mentality where this has happened to me and I'm now a victim of the circumstance.
That makes sense to me. I wanted to ask you about that opportunities for growth and learning. That now I'm retrenched, and what opportunities are there for me? Because I think sometimes when we're in a crisis, we don't see the opportunities, we see the negatives. But obviously, everything in life that comes to us is a gift in some form, even if it's a gift we don't want.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a perfect opportunity again to enhance your skills and upskill yourself, because change is the only constant in the world. And if we want to remain relevant in an ongoing changing world, we have to upskill ourselves. So the buzz right now, the big trend, as we all know, is AI, right? And there's this fear that AI and the robots are going to take our jobs. And there is some truth to that, but not in the way that we think. It's if you are not embracing AI and not learning how to use AI in your day-to-day role and activities, you will be left behind and you will lose your job to someone who is upskilling themselves in AI. And we are seeing job adverts out there now where one of the criteria is AI knowledge and how to use AI. And that doesn't mean that you now have to know how to program AI and create your own ChatGPT. I mean, if you can do that, that's great and amazing. But it's just how can you use AI strategically as a thinking partner to help you become more effective and impactful and value adding, but also how to help you work more efficiently, effectively, by taking on mundane tasks that you could potentially automate and become much more efficient in your role.
That makes a lot of sense. I also think it could be maybe something to add to a to-do list is, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm going to spend an hour or 2, and I'm going to learn and upskill myself in that space. I also think just to encourage people to redo your profile. If we've been through this trauma of COVID, never mind the trauma of retrenchment, it might be nice to have a good snapshot of where you are at in terms of your psychological profile. Can Paula and Cheryl, can you put your email addresses in the chat in case anybody is interested in connecting with you? So I suppose the last question, Paula, before handing over to Cheryl for the profiles, is, so if you could sort of condense it and say, what is the impact on people's psyche if they are retrenched? I mean, we've discussed the loss, the anxiety and that, but can you summarize it?
Yeah, so, as I said, and as we've chatted about, we all absorb or process trauma differently. And so, but what contributes to that is the impact on our psychological state, right? And the one that we've mentioned is it's that loss of identity, that loss of self-worth, which we get from having a sense of belonging and a sense of identity in the workplace and from a professional point of view and those networks. So retrenchment can trigger that and kind of put us into an identity crisis, which can impact our self-esteem and our self-worth and our self-value, right? And so that's why it's so important to separate your self-value and self-worth and what you bring to the table, so your skills, your knowledge, your wisdom, your experience, from your job title or your job status, because they're not one and the same thing. They're 2 separate things. And then also understanding that you may have heightened stress and anxiety because of the situation that you're in. So particularly around financial uncertainty or instability. And that can actually trigger our cortisol levels. And when our cortisol levels are spiked, it can actually impact our adrenal glands and our kidneys and lead to adrenal fatigue, and also, depression and those kind of things. It can affect our sleep patterns. It can affect our eating patterns. And chronic anxiety is detrimental to the body. It can also give what we call that sort of fog brain, or cotton wool brain, where we just we can't actually think clearly because we're so overwhelmed with this added level of stress and anxiety. And then the risk of that is depression, right? So suicidal thoughts and depression, and we've seen a lot of that. And particularly when it comes to men, 1 in 5 men are more susceptible to suicide than women because of the stereotype and conditioning, that men don't show weakness, they don't show emotion, all those kind of things. And men are supposed to be the protector and the provider and the breadwinner. So it really hits the male ego hard, which is why we see, and they don't talk about it and they don't reach out, and they turn to other coping mechanisms. It's not, and I'm generalizing here, but the stats show that it impacts men at a higher level than women. It's not to say that it doesn't impact women too. And then there's, on the other side of it is the plus side, which we've touched on, is that post-traumatic growth. I've gone through a painful traumatic experience, but it can also just be that springboard that we need to bring us into a different view and a different perspective, and shift it into a positive that can just spur us into action. Is how do I learn from this? How do I evolve from this? What's the value that I can take away from this? And how can I use this as a positive motivator as opposed to a negative one?
Thank you, Paula. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a coughing episode. I'd like to hand over to Cheryl just to share your thoughts on the profile. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Cindy. So, I've worked in close collaboration with Paula, and we've done some really awesome collaborations with our clients from a leadership development perspective. And we've worked throughout the entire spectrum, I'd say, with people that have been retrenched, coached and mentored people through creating self-awareness in the assessment. So if you think of a puzzle, we were interested in looking at an individual holistically, because that's ultimately who you are as a person. There's so many different pieces of the puzzle that go into who you are as a person. So today, I'd really love to give away our values assessment. Now, the values assessment has placed quite a lot of importance in recruiting people that are of the same value as us. Our value different things to you. Values become our cornerstone in every decision that we make in life. You're going to go through interviewing companies now, and you're going to ask them what their values are. What do they have a corporate value profile? What does that look like? Do they eat, sleep, and breathe their values? Are they on the wall? Are they on their website? Are they a values-driven organization? Because if they are, that forms your culture. And if they are empathetic and really have a passion for people, then you'll get to know those values quite quickly and have a look at them and see what they mean to you. And a lot of individuals nowadays are really interviewing companies, more so than companies are interviewing them, because you're going to go through this change now, which has affected you, being retrenched. And you know what now, I mean, once you've listened to all these tips that Paula and Cindy have given you today, sit with a piece of paper and weigh up all the strengths and every attribute about yourself that is so positive, and all the things that you can do, everything that's in your power as well. So our values questionnaire really looks at 21 core values. What is your major motivator? What are your major motivators? We're looking for 7. Then it'll highlight in the report your possible minor motivators, and then demotivators. So we've got the 3 categories, okay, 7, 14, 21, and landing on 21 values. So we put them in order and we have a look at that, and then what you value most is what's going to come out of that report. Beautiful report to take snippets on, take some of that information, put it in your CV. Yeah, and I really also urge you to have a look at your LinkedIn profiles, market yourself now. This is a fantastic way, like Paula mentioned, cluster your day into, and it's your default diary. What am I going to do today? Really find purpose in that day. Be productive, and work on LinkedIn, work on your CV, work on loading alerts on all these platforms. Find a recruiter, ProTalent, that you can make them your best friend, and you phone them. Remember, guys, a squeaky wheel gets the most oil, okay? It doesn't matter if you bug them weekly, but you need to be engaged. You need to stay connected. Okay, so the values questionnaire is something that I'd love to give to one person today, and the other one is our EQ Light assessment. So the EQ Light assessment looks at your emotional intelligence, okay, and it covers these sort of constructs: assertiveness, flexibility, interpersonal skills, open-mindedness, optimism, relationship management, self-awareness, self-confidence, self-control, and stress management. So it gives you a beautiful report as to who you are as a person, your ability to manage those emotions, what needs a little bit of work on. And I'm very, very happy to spend an hour and give feedback to the two lucky people that won there today. I just, yeah, I've got lots of bows in my quiver, and I can help in many areas, just to help fast track this journey for you. I've got lots of ideas as well that I can help in a feedback session, give you certain platforms that you can tap into. And yeah, you know what, you've just got to find a positive network to draw from. And just know that there is hope. There is hope.
Thank you,
Thanks, Cindy.
Cheryl. Can I please ask you to choose two numbers between 1 and 51, and then we will say who's won these two amazing profiles.
51, okay. So I'm going to go with 21.
21 is Alvin Paulson.
Okay, and then I'm going to go 49.
That's you. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm going to go with, let's go with 15.
Louise Palmer.
Perfect.
Fantastic. So it's Louise and Alvin. Fantastic. Cheryl, thank you so much for your generosity, and your details are there in case anyone would like to still do it, a profile with Cheryl. I think that's an amazing gift from you. So thank you so much. And thank you for your time. And Paula, is there any final comment from you before we finish up for the morning?
Yeah, I just think, if you are going through something like this, or someone that's going through like this, it's not the end of the world. It may feel like it, but you're not alone. And, reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out. Friends, family, us, whoever, we all can lean in and help each other.
Thank you so much, Paula. And to everyone who's joined us, thank you so much for your engagement, and wish you everything of the best going forward. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
Yes.